And we will now open a big debate. We will not speak about theological issues, and we will debate about the freedom of religion. So let's stick to this line of thought. And next time we will have a theological conference. So, your questions, please. Yes, please. Please wait always for the microphone. Good afternoon. Hayato Joseph Okamura, member of the Chamber of the Deputies and member of the subcommittee for the support of democracy and human rights abroad. Last year we decided to protect many religious traditions and believers everywhere in the world. I would like to thank you very much for your presentations. And I have the impression, and I'm not sure whether the others will agree or not, that currently in our country the situation is not so bad yet. In the parliament we can have a good debate about the forms of marriage, the forms of union. So I'm asking myself, what is the cause of the situation in Finland, for example, that you are being prosecuted? Why in the UK you have got the freedom of speech that is reduced in such a way? We cannot imagine this situation, and I would like to emphasize cooperation or even friendship between the Jewish community and the Christian community in our country. Based on intuition, I think that perhaps this friendship of Jews and Christians is one of the factors that help the situation in the Czech Republic. So it was more of a comment. It's not a question, actually. So sorry for that. That was a good comment. Thank you, Hayato Okamura. And I could see one question at the back of the room. Thank you. Petr Šimunek from the Ministry of Culture. A question to Mrs. Räsänen. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Do you know when the next hearing at the Supreme Court will be held, and when will the decision passed? When will the decision be passed? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. The Supreme Court in Finland has started to handle this case on October, and I'm waiting for the decision whether they will have an oral hearing for me or not. So it is not sure if I will be heard orally in the Supreme Court. But I hope that I would have this possibility to defend myself. But the final verdict will be given in next year, in the spring of next year.
In your speech, you have outlined that you expect that the dispute might go even to the European Court. So do you have any signals of that it might be heard by the European Court? Is this a case of only Finland or the whole of the European Union or Europe?
I just mentioned in my speech that if it is needed, I'm ready to defend myself also before the European Court of Human Rights. But of course I hope that and trust that I would get an acquittal in the Supreme Court of Finland. So if I get the acquittal from the Supreme Court, then the case is closed in Finland. But if I would lose, then I would appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Perhaps Elisabeth can estimate more about.
That's right. To appeal a case to the European Court of Human Rights, you need to appeal on one of the grounds of the European Convention of Human Rights. And that has been argued all throughout Päivi's case. So when looking at the judgments so far in Finland, the judge has been relying a lot on the human rights under the European Convention, and that gives a basis by which to then appeal if necessary. So there is the foundation if the team needs to appeal later on. Because it's difficult to argue against a country's law by looking at the law itself. As Päivi said, she's been prosecuted under what is translated as the war crimes part of the legislation. So to argue against that, you need to look to something higher, the European Convention on Human Rights, which has been looked at in these lower down cases.
Děkujeme. Další otázky? Kde jsou mikrofony?
Any other questions? Stanislava Kubizňáková. In the Czech Republic, we have the freedom of religion that is defined by the Constitution. And in practice, we can bring up our children, for example, in Catholic faith. And Professor Pidha ranked the totalitarian regimes based on the date of origin. And he said that class dictatorship is a dictatorship against other people, and there was also racial dictatorship, which did not think that the others were humans. National Socialists thought that Jews were not full humans, and then LGBT pertains the human aspect as such. This would be the worst. Pope Francis, as well as Benedict XVI, they are against these gender ideology. And in the Czech Republic, there are dozens of churches, including the Catholic one, are against the signature of the Istanbul Convention. And this convention was signed by government of Bohuslav Sobotka and Petr Fiala, but it was never approved by the parliament. But despite that, by the end of this year, framework educational system should be reviewed. What is the question, please? I have to interrupt you. Only 2 sentences more. And this review will make it possible to implement the LGBT or gender ideology to be educated. It will be part of the framework educational program. How can we prevent this? How should we fight against this? Well, this is a topic worth several conferences. But probably we could reduce this to a very simple question. If a group of people feels to be endangered by any ideology in any country, how can they protect and defend themselves?
So 2 things that I will mention. The first is that from a legal framework, and you mentioned the Istanbul Convention, we have to be very clear in law on terminology. And I think this is how a lot of the boundaries have been broken down. So what the lady was referring to is a European convention that is trying to say that a man is not a man and a woman is not a woman, and then lower the threshold for understanding what the categories are. And I think that countries have to be very clear in defining the terms which certain ideologies are trying to say are more hazy. Law is dependent on clarity, and the rule of law is dependent on terms being absolutely clear. So we have an opportunity to clearly define that now in public debate. And to your question as well about different ideologies coming in the UK we have a concept of offence and not being able to say something which is perceived to be offensive to other people. And this movement is coming largely into the universities, actually, when you look at discussions at universities about what you're not able to say and what you can say. And so I think that there is a real opportunity to be able to engage on this topic. And the European Court has said speech which is offensive is still legitimate speech. And we need to be clear on that category to say, even though some people may be offended with what we say, it is still allowed to be said in society, so we don't lower that threshold.
Tak je mi to strašně líto.
I'm extremely sorry, but we need to keep all the remaining questions for the next part of the conference. Of course, we will not forget about them, but we are so behind the schedule that we must make a break now. Perhaps we will reduce this break to 5 minutes. No, I think that the break will be 10 minutes and we will try to speed up in the second part of the conference. Yes, ladies are usually right in the practical aspect, so we will have a 10-minute break and then we will gather here again. Thank you.